The myth about Kronos. In ancient times, there was the reign of the god Ouranos, the sky god who created a large number of giants, monsters, and chaos. Subsequently, his son Kronos deposed him and put an end to his governance, his reign. Kronos would therefore symbolize the regularization, the ordering of chaos. Ouranos is, for his part, the supreme architect. He created the earth and the mountains. But the myth demonstrates his lower hypostasis at the end of his reign, the chaos and sterile ideas manifested in the creation of monsters, of titans. The lower hypostasis of the planet is when we don't know why we create or for what purpose. Kronos arrived at that moment and brought order to chaos. According to mythology, the reign of Kronos is the golden age of humanity, the time of the harvest, the reign of the time. Therefore, Kronos embodies the notion of time as the supreme law and consequently the most powerful limitation. Time is the major factor that limits us. We can neither shorten it nor lengthen it. It is time that restricts us and creates limits. The reversal of Saturn. He was cursed by his own mother, and he was afraid that his children would overthrow him, the same way he overthrew Ouranos. So he started eating his children until Zeus or Jupiter escaped this fate and overthrew Saturn in turn. What did the revolution of Jupiter give? Ouranos gave us the idea of chaos. Saturn brought order to chaos, and Jupiter brought the understanding of time, the understanding of the value of time. For that reason, we can conclude that if we are not able to look and see in depth, time will harm us, will eat and destroy us. Fear is the lower hypostasis of Saturn. Harshness and severity are its higher hypostasis. Moon, Saturn. Saturn defines situations when you must do it this way. Situations of obligations, harshness and cruelty, power and system. The moon in turn is relaxation, rest, vital needs, and the comfort zone. When Saturn falls in its lower pole, let us remember the mythology about Kronos. Then it falls in the lunar pole, which gives rise to fears, psychological blockages, disinterest in leaving the comfort zone, obsession with the comfort zone, hence the non-desire to leave it, the orientation towards the past. Here we see the work of experience, but most often that of someone else, not ours. The neighbor didn't succeed in a similar project. The cousin was not able to do it, so I won't make it either. When this axis is unbalanced, the individual confuses the notions of work and rest. The upper pole stands for system, control, you must, power, society and social opinions, law, time, and its principles. The lower pole corresponds to the absence of the inner core, dependence on society, behavioral patterns, fears, aging, the pressure of circumstances, the absence of individuality and mediocrity. According to Saturn, in its higher hypostasis, I must manifest harshness, no compromise, make everything work according to a plan, be well organized and cold, renouncing emotions. Saturn in house 2. In financial matters, I must forget about emotions. I should not share my money with anyone else. I must express my emotions through control, concrete actions, practical attitude. When someone asks me for help, I either don't help at all or I help with an action, a fact, a practical advice. If I enter the emotional vortex of the other person, Saturn will hit me hard. The moon in Pisces, in conjunction with Saturn. My psychological need is to help everyone, save everyone, but Saturn orders me through its conjunction. Don't get involved in this. If you are not asked to, don't intervene. If the native still acts this way, then the help offered will turn against him in the form of feelings of guilt, fear, and shame. I helped the person, after which she started imposing obligations on me. You told me in the past that you could help me and now you refuse it. You help others and then you are the one who suffers. The moon in square to Saturn. I lack hardness and coldness. I am not capable to say no according to the Saturnian principle. This can be healed, can be corrected through rigid planning, respecting schedules through a very clear understanding of time. The astrological graphic symbol of Saturn is the cross of matter of the earth or the ascendant, rising above the crescent of the soul. It is the reversed symbol of Jupiter. The symbol personifies the form and the system having its origin in the soul. In the symbol of Saturn, the cross of matter receives support from the soul. Therefore, for man to reap a good harvest, the cross of matter, he must first invest and dedicate his soul, the crescent of the soul, in his work on earth. The harsh reality of life requires this. Thus, the earthly and material world reflects the different states of the human soul. Man can become aware of the state of his soul by experiencing inner contradictions and internal conflicts and finding constructive solutions to conflict situations. Saturn forces us to compare any idea or dream with the reality in which we live. We learn this way to be responsible for our actions and to be aware of their consequences. Such are methods of our education, symbolized by Saturn. In mythology, Saturn is Chronos, Father Time, the guardian of the threshold between life and death, between what is temporary and what is eternal, the one who sets strict limits to everything and ensures that everything ends sooner or later. Everything in the universe is subject to the law of the pendulum, and we must understand that it is impossible to live in permanent expansion, in total ease and carefreeness. Inevitably, the opposite will happen, and man will be placed in conditions of severe constraints and obstacles. Man's ability to turn inward, to realize that the problems in his life are the result of his faults, that he needs to reevaluate, that is to introspect, and to reconsider the different aspects of his personality, comes with a high spiritual level. Suffering is a subjective perception of limitations and difficulties. Each of us is destined to have our own measure of difficult experiences and suffering. Our task is not to aggravate them, but to perceive and experience them correctly. Suffering will be a good teacher if the individual understands the meaning of obstacles and understands how to overcome them, as well as the need to change oneself in response to these situations. A correct understanding of life circumstances, as well as the willingness to change, helps us to live this life differently and realize ourselves differently. To change our internal characteristics faster and more effectively. There is no other way to proceed. All the superficial pursuit of happiness, all the misconceptions affirming that everything around us is created by random circumstances, all come from an ignorant conception of life. At the very beginning of his spiritual development, man is egocentric, poorly understanding the world as well as himself. He aspires to happiness and well-being only for himself, and therefore perceives all the obstacles he encounters as sources of unhappiness, in addition considering people around him responsible for his misfortunes. During this period, multiple negative karmic bonds are formed as he hates, fights, and resists the course of circumstances. At this level, the individual cannot be characterized by discipline, endurance, or self-control, and he perceives life only as a battlefield, not being capable of making any effort on himself. As a rule, he sees enemies in all restrictions that come to him from the outside world. He struggles with fate, hates the obstacles and limitations brought by Saturn, and does not understand what life requires from him. And this is self-transformation. He will not agree to change under any pressure or under any circumstances. Slowly and gradually, the individual begins to understand that the difficulties and obstacles he encounters are not accidental. Internal discipline begins to develop. Man realizes that these external obstacles and circumstances allow him to stay alone with himself and to see how internal spaces of silence are created. He stops fighting against external obstacles and finds himself more and more often in states of peace, serenity, and tranquility. Very often, the discovery that there is no need to struggle against external obstacles, as well as this quiet acceptance of life, comes as an enlightenment, a revelation that inner peace does not depend on external circumstances. Saturn is time in all its hypostases, time and planning. Saturn is responsible for time, the year's lived age, the older generation and experience. Saturn in house 3. Do not watch the news and limit the flow of information. If there is a lot of unnecessary information, then Saturn will weigh and destroy. Because society likes to scare us. How come you don't watch the news, so you don't know what's going on in the world? According to Saturn in house 3, I should not watch news on which I cannot have an impact. Saturn is an economic planet, of most necessary and indispensable. Depending on the house of Saturn's placement, one must save, eliminate, and throw away all garbage, so that there is ideal order. In the house of the natal Saturn, it is necessary to plan and set deadlines. There must be crystalline temporal rigidity, and deadlines must be specified and respected. Dr. Evil. Saturn is called a great malefactor. It is believed that Saturn only brings bad luck in the chart. Saturn is a great master. He teaches us to work, which will result in experience and professionalism. Saturn weighs on us and crushes us if we don't make the right use of its energy. At the age of Aquarius, the energy of Saturn is not popular. We rather acquire ideas of universal freedom, that there are no more earthly borders because there is the internet planes and high-speed transport. Today we say that the modern generation is an immoral generation and that the old institutions have been destroyed. This is explainable because Saturn's energy has to go somewhere. And here you go. It is poisoning the ecology, destroying nature. Its energy has fallen from its superior hypostasis. The principle of hierarchy is vague. The idea of universal freedom is popular and is cultivated on a large scale. The idea of gifts of destiny, of easy ways, of universal common good, and statements like karma has been cancelled, are the objects of the obsession of the modern generation. The theme of efforts, of building, of labor is not popular. Even in harmonious aspects, Saturn can cause harm if the person does not use his energy correctly. Venus in aspect to Saturn. The native must set precise objectives, count the money, control it. If he does not do this, Saturn will cause the feeling of fear of money. The house of the natal Saturn expects from the native that he builds a system and endures in the name of a result. There will be no quick results here. A crocodile, a spider. The crocodile is linked to the occult hypostasis. The crocodile's jaw is associated with the woman's birth canal, with the dreadful pain during childbirth. Caesarean section is not natural because the child does not receive the temper unlike during a natural birth, although painful for the mother. Why the spider? The spider web is an example of a system that also symbolizes fear. All ancient reptiles in general. Also an elephant, the symbol of strength and experience, especially in Asia. In terms of health, bones, calcium, the spine, teeth, in yoga they say that all illnesses come from problems with the spine. In psychosomatics, the destruction of teeth is caused by fear, which in turn is the consequence of the afflicted moon, of the lower pole of the moon, the Saturnian pole. The sign of Aquarius is intelligent, futuristic, scientific, free, original. non-standard, unconventional, friendly, sociable, collective, faceless, meaning neutral, androgynous, gray, schematic, large-scale, cold. Above all, it has the effect of the crowd. Mars in Aquarius. I act only within the framework of opinion and social approval. I let myself be guided or carried away by the crowd, and it is difficult for me to show my initiative if it differs from the demands of society. I act according to a model without showing my anger if a society does not approve of it. Saturn in aspects with the personal planet gives the other planet concentration, endurance, experience, tenacity, and professionalism. In the negative, Saturn blocks the planet with fears and negative social models. Opposition Mars or Saturn. I am afraid of action, of showing initiative. Opposition Sun, Saturn. I'm afraid of having a personality, of showing myself, of showing my talents. Opposition Moon, Saturn. I don't feel my needs, I help others, but I don't take care of myself. If I have a harmonious aspect of Moon and Saturn, I set goals, I control everything, and manage everything, which gives me great emotional comfort. Venus in dissonant aspect to Saturn. I am afraid of money, of relationships. I have several models of fears, but this fear is rational because Saturn is a social planet. For example, I have experienced a fire in my home, and since then I have been afraid of fire. The model of fear came from the outside world. Venus opposition Saturn. I have the model according to which you cannot have a lot of money. There are no easy gains. Money is a synonym for hard work, and you have to push yourself to sweat.